Okay, John, welcome to Time to Show Up. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I wonder if you can tell us something about your life course that brought you to this moment right now. So, just very briefly, you arrived here to show up for something in your life. Can you give us the short version
Oh,
that
the
ends in
short
this moment?
version. I've been telling this story a little bit recently, and I'll see how short I can go. But the short of the short version is that I've been meaning to go and start this company for the past 10 years, or really the past maybe 6 or 7 years. But when I had been running my own digital agency and decided that to start a product company, I should go and try my hand at working within a Series A company. And so I did that. And that's when I ended up in the UK as regional director for a startup called Commerce Guys at the time, which has since turned into Platform SH. Great company, still good friends with the CEO. And I went there thinking, okay, if I learn how to work within a Series A, that'll give me a good idea about how to build and lead a Series A. And then I went on a series of steps that all were logical and all were in the right direction. And I stand by, but they were all in the direction of coming around to, building something, being a great leader, being able to start a company again, as I had in the past. And so really for the past 10 years, I've been on this journey to reach now, which is now I have two great co-founders and we're building, and I'm excited, and lots of challenges and change coming from Amazon as a leader there, where it's very structured and very I won't say it's easy to be successful. There's certainly a lot of work to do, but it's a very straightforward path to what good looks like, versus coming into an environment where now prioritization is more difficult, and there's a lot of different tasks at very different levels, high levels and low levels and all these kinds of things. So yeah, I mean, what's brought me to this point is a plan that, my wife and I have had for basically 10 years. That's the short version.
Wow.
Okay, so 10 years at least bringing you up to this moment. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
So fair incubation. And so from today's session, when you leave us today, what would be a successful outcome if you kind of close down the laptop and you walk away and you go home to your wife, you're like, it was amazing, this is what I got out of it? What might that look like?
I suppose in the having a framework for change so that I can evolve into the person that I need to be a great CEO and leader for this company, and to support my two co-founders, and to build a great culture, and to bring along the right investors, to build a great product.
Just everything, really.
Yeah, it's not a small ask. I have high expectations for you.
Great. A framework for you'll notice that we're taking notes during this session.
Yeah, we've got little notepads here. So
yes,
if you see us glancing down.
Stuff.
I think the thing that
Great.
you will be able to do better than a lot of people I would talk to, and I'm talking to a lot of my colleagues, and ex-colleagues or friends, and some of whom are successful startup CEOs and have good advice for me, maybe specifically about the mechanics of being a CEO or the mechanics of operating a startup. But I think more than ever, especially in this early stage, being able to operate myself as a being able to focus when I need to focus on the right things, I think is quite difficult outside of when it becomes a lot less structured. And so maybe that's somewhere where you can help me, is working out how to operate myself as, the operating, if there is an operating system.
Yes. Well, you came to the right place, because that's definitely our aim, to really drill down to the psychological bit, which brings us on to this next bit, which is about consent, right? So we want to get deep into what might be going on within you your operating system, what might be getting in the way, but also what motivates you. So we just want to check that it's all explicit, that you might be prepared to be challenged in this interview, to take some risks. We're not going to put you in any position that you feel completely uncomfortable about, but we do want to find out maybe where some fears and anxieties are and what might have provoked those fears and anxieties, so we can definitely get around it. We just want to we want to know that you're on board for that process.
Yes, I'm on board. Yes, I think there's like things I want to be able to be as open as I can. There are certain things that have happened that are probably within certain levels of confidentiality at particular companies I've been in. But certainly everything about me that I can talk about without affecting that. Happy to.
Yes, and you you maintain control, obviously, the whole time about what you wish to share and what you don't wish to share. So we just want to get a sense of like whether you want to go, how much you want to go for it, and if there's a moment that's too much, which I don't think it's going to be. We're not doing a psychotherapy session here, but we are taking a psychological approach. At any point you say, well, I'm not going to go there, or that would be confidential, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, feel free to push back to us as well. That's kind of
sure thing.
the deal. Yeah. So I think we should get straight into the deep inquiry session.
Yes, I think so too.
Yeah. Okay, so John, you were talking earlier just in terms of the successful outcomes that you would want to think about or come away with some kind of framework for change. You're talking about your role as CEO, about being able to build a culture within your growing team, connected to building a great product. That's perhaps the more mechanical side of it. So we probably won't go so much into that side. But you're talking about operating yourself, focusing on the right things, especially with what seems like either a lack of or a mutable kind of structure. So you mentioned that, the previous employers, there was a much more of what seems like an explicit structure, maybe a more clearly defined route to success. And now you're in the driving seat. So when you say you want to figure out more about how to operate yourself, are there specific things that you are thinking of that you would like help with?
I think I should probably read more books on this. But one of the things is that, lots of the decisions, well, it seems as though decisions tend to be a big part of the role, and decisions need space. And so, in a lot of the roles I've occupied, and I've led teams of 50 and more people, and I've been in the manager role, and I've been working on strategy and had to kind of spend 3 months with a paper. So it's not foreign to me kind of spending time on hard decisions. But I guess the way that I spend my time now is very variable. There's some kind of imperative to run hard and fast. And for instance, my CTO co-founder is doing a great job building right now, and I'm putting tickets in Jira, and he is going off and building things. And, at the end of almost every day, he's got a really interesting demo for me to look at. And that's quite, this little sequential waterfall of we specify the thing and we build the thing. And, I've been in a software development role, and I've done that as well. And so it's kind of really easy for me to see his progress. And, with myself, there are silly things like, so I'm one of my responsibilities, and I've been in a sales team, but it's not been my primary, necessarily. I've not been the kind of primary go-to for sales for a long time. I have done that a long time ago. But for instance, one of the things I'm doing right now is selecting a CRM, which is just, and I made the decision on the weekend. It's fine. But it feels like spending a week on that kind of thing is maybe not as productive. And yet it's one of those decisions that's hard to get right. And I think I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about how sometimes the hardest decisions actually are the least important, because if it's really hard to decide between two things, maybe either of them is going to be, okay. And I think one of the things at a startup is you have to make a lot of okay decisions rather than making the absolute right decision, which a lot of the roles I've been in, it's more important to make the absolute right decision than make a lot of decisions quickly. So I guess I'm just meandering, but I think the
Yeah, I think you are going between two things though, which I think are important. Something is like about how you know that you're spending your time well when
that's
maybe
right.
you're comparing yourself to someone who you can check against something in a sense. Maybe it's a little bit more abstract, but it also feels like the capacity to make decisions maybe outside of the structure that you currently have feels a little bit exposing because you don't
Yeah, I
have the
mean,
structure telling you
right now, one of my straightforward tasks is I have to contact the whole of my network and work out how to do more customer discovery calls so we can get information about the product that we're building. And that's just a kind of matter of going and looking through my network and finding the right person and then sending them a message and saying, hey, can you do me a favor? And can I spend some time, talking to you about what we're building and asking you questions? And I can do that. It feels slow because there's a lot of work you do to kind of form up communication, which is not a cold call, but it's kind of, lukewarm call after maybe not speaking to someone for a while. That's somewhat straightforward, and I could keep doing that, but there are other things going on at the same time and decisions that have to be made that are big and strategic. And also things like there's such a breadth to what I have on my plate at the moment, the messaging, the marketing, working out the investor deck that we're building, putting in place our the principles that we're operating by, thinking about whether we're going to be an international company versus just focusing on the US, things like this that seem to affect the messaging and so are somewhat valid to make decisions around, but also it's just completely unknowable at this point and we'll probably change our minds later. So it's kind of it's like intellectual discipline, not getting sidetracked on things that aren't important, but also being able to let mediocre decisions flow through me and being okay with that. Yes, we'll probably go international immediately because our product will be particularly good in these territories that that aren't first language English. So there's this kind of like just a very different way of operating. I think at Amazon, one of the principles is insist on the highest standards, right? And that's really, really important for a big operating business. And I've been living by that for the past 5 years. And then, it's an environment where decisions take a while. I've kind of gone through a process of getting a decision made for 6 months, very important decision that was hundreds of millions of dollars impact. But that's a very different process to like, okay, I need to make very strategic decisions very quickly that may change later. And how much do I hold on to that? So I don't know. I have a fairly wide-ranging career between being software engineer, technical manager, head of solutions architecture, served in the sales team, product manager. It feels like I can draw from a lot of these, but day to day, it's hard to sit down and not feel a little bit of decision fatigue about what's most important to do right now, and fatigue on the how long it should take to do things, and whether I've done the most important things that day. I get to the end of the day and it's like, I don't know, I did some things, they were good things. Are these the right things?
There's a lot there, isn't there?
There is, yes. Let I just chisel it down and then hand over to you for the next question. So I feel like a major question that you're asking yourself is who you most need to be amongst all of these things. And Natalie's gonna ask you what might be getting in the way of that, because I feel like that's the question. Are you an operations person? Are you an ideas person? Are you managing this? Who do you need to keep coming back to? If we're talking about drilling, who do you most need to be when you're making these decisions?
And so just to reflect back, just some of the things that you've talked about. So there's kind of the knowable and unknowables. There's something around discernment. actually, I think discernment might be at the heart of this. So maybe what gets in the way of that? So discernment about what are the tasks that are the highest priority? What is an enough of a good decision for you to say, okay, that will do, so I can move on to the next thing. I get the sense as well that because you have so many different skills and capacities, the tendency is to spread yourself too thin. Just because you can do things doesn't mean that you should do things. So I think, again, discernment there around what is it that you should be focusing on. And you mentioned decision fatigue as well. So there's a lot in there. And then many times folks will orient towards a particular set of principles or North Star to help make those decisions. But it sounds to me like when you talked about at Amazon, there was something around the highest possible standard being the orientation, being the North Star in terms of how to execute and prioritize and perform. You ask yourself, like, what standards are the standards that I, John Kennedy, want to inculcate, like, or use as the rudder for this business? So in terms of all of these different elements, what do you think is getting in the way of you being able to take the next steps forward to clarify who you need to be or what you need to be able to have a role that is sustainable for you and that is able to direct your business in a way that feels like it's flourishing? What are the key things that are getting in the way of that, do you think?
I think that it's evolving rapidly. I brought on a co-founder a while ago. We're just bringing on a third co-founder now, and that changes my role because of their capabilities. And that's, almost just an excuse, because presumably everything will keep changing constantly for the next, 3 to 4 years at least. Companies don't settle down very much until they're through Series A or Series B. Things change rapidly about roles and responsibilities, and so I think, to give you an example, there was this ridiculously simple task that I should do, and I have now started, but started is maybe an overstatement. The very simple task is I have a lot of notes of all of these customer conversations I've been having. I need to put these notes in a central place so that everyone, or so that the other two co-founders, can read them. And I have talked to them about these notes, so they have some idea of what's going on. But if I put them in the central place, then they will be able to refer to them, and it brings some more confidence, and it also sets a standard for one of my co-founders who's also doing customer discovery calls. I have a lot of experience in, I have 8 years experience in product management, and that is kind of, I can lean on that to know, to build best practice for customer discovery calls. And so I should be able to, by putting these notes in a central place in a structured way that they can access, this should inspire confidence about what we're building and set a good example for doing customer discovery calls without me, all these kinds of things. But the weight of should I be doing this task, which feels very in the weeds, like I'm looking at my Evernote notes, and then the first decision I had to make was, well, where do these notes go? Essentially, should be in Google. Are we going to use Notion? Blah blah blah, mechanical. So eventually, I got to the point after a week, which was like, well, we're using Notion. Notion's the thing. So then it's like, okay, going back to this task and saying, okay, where does it go? What is there a structure to this? Do I use the structure that I've used before? All of these things, I've made these decisions lots and lots of times in the past and just done it. But I have put off this task as I've been doing other tasks, and it's just something that's, I think it's not minutia. I think it is actually very important, and especially at this stage, because things that can feel like minutia are actually really important at this stage. And so I just need to go and do the thing, which is not complicated. I need to look at my notes. I need to look at the parts that I've bolded and put those bold parts in the summary notes in this new location, and then tag it. Okay, and hold put on. Things against it.
I want to just pause you there. So, like, you know exactly the steps that you need to take. You know exactly the process. You've done it before. What would it mean if you actually did it? Is it because it takes you a step closer to success? Is it because you're accountable to yourself, and if it goes tits up, you'll be like, I only have myself to blame? Is it that there's something else that you feel is competing with that time? Is it the boredom factor? You don't want to be translating notes? Is it something else?
Yeah, there's lots of those things. It could be that I think that this isn't something I should be doing, but I think that it is something that I should be doing. So is it, and I don't, maybe this is a call to get philosophical on, but is it my conscious fighting with my subconscious? Like, I should do the thing. Should I really, like, is that how I should be
John,
spending my time?
I think I can say with a high level of confidence that a lot of this is noise, and it's actually not about those things. Yeah. Like, I think part of our process here is looking into what story is underlying the choices you're making or not making. And I'm getting a sense here that you really need to feel sure about stuff. Like you told us, 10 years in the making, putting yourself in a company to learn what you need to do to do the next thing that's coming next. And I feel like this is the same thing. Like whether it's Notion or Evernote or uploading the notes, it's like everything's got to be there for me to be sure. Like I got to learn everything to be sure. And I think that's noise because yes, you got to do that. And yes, you can put it in Notion. But I think there's a story here about what it means for you to do it maybe before you've crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, and underlined everything. And I wonder what that story might be for you. Almost like I got an image of you standing on the edge of a pool and not diving in, and then like moving to another edge and then still not diving in, then maybe putting your foot in and taking it back out. And
Yeah.
so tell me if that feels right, but also like, what are you telling yourself about what gets done if you do all that stuff, right? What's next?
Yeah. Definitely I have a sense that I want to get this right. And what
do you have a story about getting things right?
Yeah. What would I do after that? I guess I would go back to digging up, or kind of working out who I should be talking to get more product feedback, or working on the deck, or doing one of those other things. I think probably the need to be right runs in my family. I'm going to start blaming my childhood, my father, but
needing to be right or needing to. What do you mean by that? Like you can't. Is that about not messing up first?
Maybe.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So you really need.
I felt like I'd unpacked that one a while ago, but maybe not. I think.
Okay, we're not sure, but it feels like there's a fear of stepping out before something else is done first. But it feels like that something else being done.
Everything seems like it's dependent upon everything else.
Yeah.
So, another thing is I want to approach people with clarity and say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. And then right now, everything is so tangled that talking to people about what I'm doing is difficult. It was very simple to talk about who I was and what I was doing 6 months ago.
Yeah.
I'm head of product for this product at Amazon. Everyone knows what that is. I'm building an AWS product. I have this big team that's working for me doing this thing. That's a very simple way to present in the world. And it's about to, and I'm grappling with this. One of my mentors said to me, it was astounding when he stepped out of Amazon and suddenly he had to present himself to the world, and he got such different responses than he got with kind of Amazon behind him. And I'm grappling with that as well. The fact that I'm going to have to suddenly present in this new way that's going to be maybe less interesting or maybe less attractive to people for a while. Maybe that'll change, but that kind of mess of who I am and what I'm doing is also just difficult for me to sort through.
So it feels like a mess needs to be cleaned up
Yeah, I mean,
first.
well, so the product is evolving, which is what you'd expect, right? You learn things, you build things, you change it and its vision. And so it's not easy to nail down exactly how to describe it. And that's a problem for me because one of the ways that I describe who I am and what I'm doing is the thing that I'm building.
Hmm.
And that mess, it's kind of messes me all the way through because that's how I define my work.
What if I jump and
Please.
add?
Yeah, yeah.
There's something around, so, and I really hear you when you say this. I was having a conversation with someone not long ago about what happens when you step out of a recognizable branded role onto a stage where you might have a halo effect for a while, but then after a while it's you on your own 2 feet and whatever is coming from you and the people that you're building with, community sort of around you, whether it's some business or professional domain or other. And so you're saying about presenting in a new way and wondering about being less interesting or less attractive to people. I get this, but I'm wondering, when sort of Erin's talking about story and narrative and about sorting out the mess, there's a reason that you decided, or that you had this flame, this flicker of inspiration and creativity, this hunger to create something 10 years ago. There's a reason that has led you to where you are. And I'm very curious about what story might be underneath the fear of being not interesting enough, not attractive enough, not named enough, not sort of, standing with this massive brand behind you. What was it that, what's the story behind what moved you to step out by yourself? Because there's something there, there's a flame that's there.
I've had lots of ideas over the time. My pattern is to kind of identify things that I'd like to build, and I've gone towards them in various ways. I think I decided 10 years ago, or even longer ago, maybe 12, 13 years ago, that to build the scale of software that I wanted to build, I needed to go and build within a framework like venture-backed software company. It's funny to say that I want to build something without just having the same thing and wanting to build that for 10 years, because it's not always been the same thing. The thing that I'm building right now, I've known that I've wanted to build since about 2020 and identified this problem with the software development process. I've struggled with it. Plenty of my colleagues have, various founders and product managers and software development managers. And so it became obvious to me that I wanted to build this thing. But the common theme is I want to be building. And I want to be building within a company where I want to work with the people, and I want to build a great culture, and I want to eliminate some of the kind of the bad patterns that I've seen at all the companies that I've worked at and the ways that I've built businesses a long time ago. And so, more than anything, I know that I'll come up with ideas because I've always been an ideas person. I've always been able to kind of say, okay, here's a problem that is widespread and valuable and understandable. And so let's go work out how we could solve this. And here are 3 solutions, and here's a good one. That's not really been a problem for me. And that's what led me to product management, I think, because that's really, when it comes down to it, what you're doing. But to build something where I have the ability to actually have some control over culture and control over process and control over the leaders who I'm working with, that's really what has kept me going towards this. And
So if you look at that like a spring, right? So I think what you've just said there is really exciting because there's a lot of intrinsic motivation that goes back more than a decade. There's a lot of knowledge that you've acquired, very purposefully I know a direction that's intrinsically motivated. I need to get the experience and knowledge through this process to get there. So that's not missing, right? That's great. That's really great. But it seems like every time that rises, something, the other side of the spring pushes back, like there's an ambivalence or something that I think is saying something to you. My guess is that it's a fear-based thing, that every time your intrinsic motivation wants to say, here we are, like this is what we're going to do, something pushes back in the other direction. Might not be fear, might be something else. You will know better. But do you get
Oh,
a
there's
sense of what that push-pull
there's plenty of
dynamic?
fear. I think one of the fears is I go out and do this thing finally after all this time, after talking to people about doing it for so long and it fails. That's a fear, definitely. I'm going
Yeah.
to put myself out there. I'm going to change my LinkedIn title in a month or so, maybe less, maybe in about 14 days,
Wow.
or a month. I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to change that title, and I'm going to republish my blog, and I'm going to put a big post out about how I've loved working at Amazon, which I have, and I really appreciate all of the help from all these people, which I have. And now I'm going on to do this thing, and it's then a thing that I can absolutely and fully fail at, like properly
Mm-hmm.
fail.
And
There haven't
visibly
been
as
many
well, like
things
people can see you fail it.
visibly, yes.
Uh-huh.
Like so I've been in roles where I could fail in minor ways, and and I've come back from them. But it's harder to properly fail at a company that's established. I've had some. One of the things was I came into one of my goals at Amazon was to be a leader of leaders and work out what that looked like at scale, and how do you be that person who's leading leaders who are leading teams. Definitely had a failure within that, about understanding the balance between passion and vision, and kind of rallying the troops versus causing discontent because of tension.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a good lesson,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a failure, and I got lots of advice from lots of people, and I worked back from it, and it was great and fine, and I learned something valuable. I think I could fail at this and learn something valuable, but it would also be incredibly public, and it would also then make me question who I am, which is hard, if I'm not getting this right, if I can't go and build this company that I've planned to build for so long, am I that person?
So there's a real fear that you might show up as not the person you hope to be by failing to make it happen.
Yeah. I know that I can operate really well in big companies, even medium-sized companies, or, go be a VP of product at a startup. I could nail all of those things. I know that I can, and I have done those things. And I think that, I'm pretty good at interviewing. So if I went and tried to go get one of those things, I could probably go get it and do it. This is the one thing that I've run my own little company, but I've not been a CEO for a venture-backed company, and I've not had that weight of growth and change on me, and I've not had to deal with a public profile around that. We'll probably go and apply for Y Combinator, and suddenly we'll be in a cohort of people who are definitely, many of whom have done it before and have experience in being a CEO. That's something that I really, really want to be brilliant at, but I have no proof around yet.
Okay, so when Natalie was
and
asking
maybe
around,
I'm terrible, and maybe everyone is terrible before they do it, but that's still a worry of mine, that I won't turn out to have the right skills to do that. That would be pretty existential for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
okay, I just want to flag up, and we'll get to it, I think, towards the end, but that you are bringing up a lot of quite black and white thinking here, right? It really becomes about failure and success and existential or not. You frame this previous experience with the leadership as a failure. You would know better than I, but was it really a failure? And I wonder if you're kind of setting up something here where it all really becomes either or. So you hesitate because
The stakes are so high.
yes, and then it goes one way or another. Like even if you're going to put your stuff on Notion,
Yeah.
like, you know, if we say it's not about putting your stuff on Notion, it's like what happens after. At some stage you're going to have to jump in the pool, right? So everything that you can kind of maybe put in the way of that moment when you really have to jump in the pool, which you've already decided to do, so it's curious in a way.
Yeah, I got to keep jumping in the pool every day.
And that's
right now.
terrifying.
It might get
yeah.
a little, yeah. I mean, it might get easier when it's all public, and you know, I've jumped in the pool publicly, and so everyone knows I'm in the pool. But right now, I have to jump in the pool every day, which is fine. But it's yeah. I think if I had to think about the fears that I have, the real fear is just, can I do this? And I can be very confident about it. I can tell you all the reasons why I should be good at this. But I still have it's still a question in my mind, because I think, you know, being CEO can mean lots of different things. You know, it could, maybe you're a sales CEO, maybe you're a gardener CEO, maybe you're a public figure CEO, or maybe you're, you know, a content creator CEO, or like, so there's probably a low likelihood that I couldn't be one of those things, you know. But still,
I think maybe part of the question is, what is a John Kennedy CEO? And I think you don't have the answer for that
just yet.
Yeah,
that's
right.
true. That's definitely true. I don't have that answer.
Yeah, and there's something about how you allow yourself to jump in the pool to discover that without freaking yourself out in the short term with this black and white fail succeed thing. It feels like that comes in very close, right? Like how it's all going to be a public disaster comes in very close to what you should do tomorrow, and maybe not consciously, right? But it comes as a block.
Yeah, I think there's something else here as well. There's
one of my.
I remember once. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as a side note, one of my good friends, who I really respect as a leader and is a CEO, just has the ability to make very big inflammatory statements publicly, and and I think, you know, he like, on the one hand, he's good, like he's fine with it, like he's fine with criticism, and he's fine with people getting their back up and all this kind of stuff. I think on the other, he also knows that doing that is powerful for his brand and the brand of his company. I don't know that I could do that, or I don't know if I need to even. I think that's not like, that's just one question in a constellation of questions, but that's a question, you know, one of the types of questions that is definitely a part of this general question of who I am.
Yeah, it feels like that's bound up very deeply in the CEO, and you mentioned it being an existential question. And I'm curious about what your relationship to discovery is, to discovering yourself, to not knowing, to that kind of. There's something around before things are created. There's a space in which things have to be imagined, and the space of, I think of it as like the fertile void. You don't know what the heck's going on. There's a sense of something needing to come. You create something as an idea, you take steps towards making it real in the world. And it's a bit like clay, like you're going to create something which is malleable. It's not going to come out as a finished product, because the whole point is in the creation of it and your relationship to what you're creating as it also creates you. So I'm kind of curious about your relationship with discovery. And then also, when it comes to John Kennedy, the CEO, if that were an emanation of who you are at a deeper place, what would that look like, rather than constructing some figure, which we all do to an extent?
Sorry?
If it's an emanation, if it's something that comes out of who you are from the values that you hold. So you mentioned earlier about how you want to be building something that is better than some of the less helpful cultures that you've seen in previous organizations. You know what you don't like, which means that there's some sense in you of what you do long for, what kind of culture you want to create and exist within. And those choices or preferences come from a deep place, which are more kind of authentically you. So I'm curious, what is it at that deeper place that you care about? What are the things that drive you, that if you tapped into that, it would make it easier to make CEO decisions? You don't have to think, right, what would a CEO do? It's like, these are the things I care about. Therefore, this is what's going to guide me when I'm in a position of leadership. I don't know if that's clear.
It's like a value. Sounds like a value question, right? If you're going to be value led.
We've been talking among our the set of the three co-founders about the principles that we want for the company. Similar to how Amazon has leadership principles, how do we operate? And I've been kind of coming to a set of 3 to 5, and I haven't landed on them well yet. I think those are helpful in making decisions. Those are helpful at a company scale, but I don't know if I have those for me specifically. Like, I think there are ways that I want to guide the culture of this company that are the best of what I've seen in lots of places. Something that supports people to be open and honest and gives them the safety to do that, but on the other hand is still high performance and is motivating and enables people to perform and gives them inspiration to perform, is one part of that. So those kinds of company culture things that I aspire to create, I think I'm a little bit more sure of than, say, what motivates me or who I am as a CEO.
Let me reframe it a little bit, because I think you must be wrong in a way, because
okay, good.
You go back 12 years, right? You go back 12 years and you've been moving towards this the whole time. Like, you've taken yourself off to camp, you've taken yourself off to university, you have thrown yourself at it. You've thrown yourself at it for more than a decade. So I feel like there's something already happening, almost despite yourself.
Your resistance.
Right. It's like, okay, well, I definitely need to be good at this first. I definitely need to work this out. And then I need to, so it's inchoate maybe, or it doesn't have language attached to it. But it's there. And what strikes me is that, I feel like on the one hand, there could be a really strong confidence in that because it's been with you the whole time. But there is something that arises that subverts that confidence for you in a moment. And I think part of it is the fear we've talked about, the fear of failure. Part of it might be fear of success. Part of it might be just showing up, however it is, success, failure, somewhere in the middle, because then you will kind of be required in some way to finish out that painting you've been trying to make. You see what I mean? It's like all those resources are there. You just haven't put it on the canvas. So someone's going to look at it and be like, wow, you painted that.
Yeah. In many ways, the path, so going through a Series A company, going through a Series E through H startup that's older, going to a public company, all of these have been, when I came to Amazon, I really wanted to learn how they wrote strategy, how they operated, organizations at scale, and what high performance looked like, knowing that Amazon was very motivated and people tend to go there and bring their best selves and grow things really quickly. All of those were really clear learning that I could point to and say, this is what I want to learn at the next place. And I went and did that. But they were also safe, defined roles where there was materials on them and many people had done them in the past. And you could go and look in the wiki about a lot of it and talk to people in the company who were doing it. I think, having built for having prepared for so long. It's just the kind of I don't want to now go into the world and be failing and have that be my brand.
Okay, so let's find out if we can, right? Because there's a part of me that kind of just wants to say very simply, John, you've done your homework. You don't have to do any more homework. Like, you get to start on your like you really like. I feel like you need permission to not keep doing more homework, which is what I think this thing about uploading all the notes is about. Like, who do you need to keep asking permission for? So on the one hand, let's just say, let's pretend you don't have to do your homework anymore. You get to jump in the pool. You've got your floaty things and you know how to swim, and it's fine in theory. Yeah. What do you know about the voice that arises contrary to that, that says you haven't done enough homework and that you are not ready? Because that keeps coming back. And it's very strong because it seems to run contrary to, I think if anybody saw the evidence on the table, they'd be like, well, this guy's ready.
Like,
he's scared, but
yeah.
he's ready. Yeah. What arises that so convincingly pulls the wind out from under you there? You might not know the answer to that. I know it's like a going like straight for the
jugular.
Yeah, straight for the jugular. But it's so powerful, right? It can really just like paralyze you by the sounds of it.
I don't know. I had a actually while I was at Amazon, I had a business coach for a while. She was awesome. Actually, she was up in Toronto and kind of coached me through a time where I really needed coaching, and that served such a great purpose for me. Kind of going back to her every week. I think maybe I need to go and just need to go and get her again, because I think that I want to be able to not ask for permission. I want to be able to be my own authority. I think that it's hard to break that habit.
That's great. Like, I think this is your challenge, because you're going to be in a CEO role where you need to be the person who doesn't need to ask for permission. And maybe, I love this idea that Natalie was talking about how comfortable are you with discovery, because there's the sense that you have to be there from tomorrow, right? Where maybe you can discover yourself towards not having to ask in this process.
I feel like I want to be collaborative with my co-founders and ask and kind of make sure that I have their
collaboration's great. It's not about collaboration, right? You'll collaborate, and
but it's interesting that there's something there on collaboration and permission.
Yes,
that those are somehow bound up.
Oh, they certainly are.
Okay, so permission goes back to kind of like a younger part of yourself, right? That when we're kids, we need to ask for permission. We need to be told that it's going to be okay, or that we've done enough to do this thing. Whereas collaboration is like an adult thing, right? Let's work together, both bring our wisdom and intellect into this. So something gets overlapped, right? Is that
there's something about making decisions. If you go and make a decision quickly and the decision has high impact and you haven't talked it through, that's how are you then losing trust with co-founders, or are you then not projecting? Am I not building their trust in me so that we can build something big if I go off and make decisions without them and implement?
But can I just draw your attention to how you make it so binary again? Yeah. Like it's almost like it becomes catastrophic. Like maybe you make a small decision. Sorry, I'm really talking.
Yes, but no. Also, there's so what is collaboration? What requires conversation and what doesn't? So, for instance, when we were thinking about setting up this project, I know where my skills generally lie, most of them, happy to be challenged on some of them. And Aaron knows the same for his. And yet, when it comes to things like the design of the logo, I've got a background in design, but Aaron's got preferences, and he dresses very well, and he chooses. So it's like, so there's a sense of like, even though we might weight it differently, the conversation still happens, and we might try some things out together until we get to the point where it's like, okay, well, let's go with this. And it's not about asking permission. It's more, there's an element, if you're lucky, of play, and then when there isn't, you're kind of encouraged or put on the spot where you have to say, actually, with my skill set or my experience, I really think this is the best path forward, and here's why. And so it's less about permission and more about wanting to really understand what your own motivations are, where your skills are, and the other person. So it becomes an enriching challenge where there's an element of challenge, but it's moving you both in the direction that you want, instead of, I'd like to do this, I need to get the sign off from this person. If they say no, I can't do it, and therefore it's all gone. Or if they say no, something else bad will happen. Is there something around someone saying, no, you're wrong, no, this isn't good enough? Is there a fear of actually being in conversation and it not going the way that you hope it will? And so you shut it down before.
I definitely want to
there.
inspire. I want to inspire my two co-founders. I think that I absolutely respect both of them. They're both in a fairly similar spot. They're probably about 7 years behind me in their careers. So I want to inspire them and be a kind of a steady
like figure model,
who is like the Amazon phrase would be the Amazon principle would be is right a lot, has good intuition and can make good decisions. The actual principle is are right a lot, which is hard to say in regular. But
is that? I wonder whether that's.
It's just.
I wonder whether you can manage that, because that's not unreasonable, right? But it feels like right a lot means wrong some of the time. So you have to be comfortable enough with wrong some of the time to be right most of the time. And it feels like maybe you're reluctant to be wrong some of the time. So you really have to be sure.
I mean, it is uncomfortable being wrong. Not like we're
sure.
sitting here at the same so it's not easy. And the thing I think I would say is, like, when you're talking about these people who are 7 years behind you, I get the sense that you're thinking of yourself also as a role model, and you talk about culture and modeling behaviors in some way. And so I think if you're thinking about what you're modeling for them, the most exciting businesses are the ones that are able to have enough psychological safety where some failure is totally within the bandwidth of creativity, and you treat it as you mentioned, like a learning experience, so that when they see you occasionally fail and you're like, I see quickly this didn't work, we're going to try something different, it gives them permission. So they're more likely to develop that discernment and capacity to share openly with you, to collaborate more fruitfully, to create the culture that you talked about at the top end of the conversation that you actually want, where things can thrive. But there has to be a bit of space for mistakes and that kind of rough and tumble where you're going to learn together. Because that's going to lead to the kind of culture that enables you to create and build really exciting things together, I think.
Does that make you feel quite anxious, that idea that you could mess up with them?
Oh, yeah. I think it definitely gives me pause when I'm about to do things, and I'd prefer to just be in a creative space where I could just feel good about picking up all the things I need to do and just doing them quickly and moving on. There's so many things to do. Yeah. I just need, so I created a silly website last week that is just a landing page with a waiting list, and it took me iterations. I went through different tools and had a lot of thinking about what it would do, and I ended up with such a simple, not very good website, which it will evolve, and there's lots of things we need to do before I can make it evolve, because there's lots of things we need to settle before we can build a website that's actually meaningful. But
can I ask you a question, John, about that? Because I think it's the same. So we've identified a pattern that you get into, right? Because it's the same thing with the Notion and the notes, right? So if you're able to see when you're operating a delaying tactic, like redoing the website when you know on a level you're doing this thing to not be doing something else? What is that something? What might that something else be in any of those times?
I don't know. You know, when I created the first iteration of the website, I took it to a co-founder, and they said, "Oh, you know, this is okay," and weren't super happy. Not very communicative about that. So I went and did it again, and he was like, "Oh, this is." They were like, "Oh, this is much better." Great. You know, that difference worries me because I wanted to have this is kind of what we should be doing straight away. And so that might be me being just way overly sensitive about positive feedback, because that's, you know, because I'm a millennial, I don't know. But, you know,
Join the club.
I'm actually like a borderline, because I'm 82. I'm literally on the border. I'm a xenial, but that whole kind of, you know, building and getting positive affirmation is definitely need the participation trophies, you know.
But also everybody being on the same page,
that was like
I
an
guess.
experience of. Sorry,
I mean, I was saying it also sounds like you feel like you're most comfortable if everybody's in agreement, and that it's actually really hard to hold difference, right? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I want everyone to be in agreement, everyone to be, together. So it's hard to hold difference. Yes, that's true. But yeah, that not getting it right does hold me back from being in flow.
You're making an equation, which is interesting, right? So that everybody might not feel the same way about something doesn't mean that you're not getting it right. And I think that's part of the core of the thing, because then of course everything has to be paused and deferred and delayed, because if everybody's not on board, it's not okay. And I don't think it's in the end, it's some people are going to be less happy with some of these things than other people, and I think it's a really uncomfortable thing maybe for you to sit with. Like, I like it more than you do. You like this more than I do.
Yeah.
And then also the role of the CEO, you know, making those difficult decisions. That's part of the role. It's making choices that other people are not always going to agree with, and then being comfortable enough, because it's not fun, but comfortable enough, being able to build that tolerance, be like, this is uncomfortable. Really, I would prefer that everyone agreed with me on this one, or that we could find some common ground. But you have, as Aaron was reflecting back earlier, 10 to 12 years under your belt. You have, I would guess, having been so successful in these positions, a really attuned sense of what's working and what isn't, when something's working, how to change it. So maybe the thing that's less traveled as a muscle, less built up as a muscle, is your ability to make the choice and then not be so bowled over by or instabilized by when someone doesn't like it.
I've been building cloud products for 20 years. You know, like I should be able to do this thing.
You can do
the thing.
That's
not the problem.
Yeah, it's your discomfort that's the problem.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like building up a tolerance for your discomfort, that you might want something to go in a direction that not everybody's fully on board for. Yeah. And actually, I'd say take confidence in a sense, because in a way you're so collaborative that you're more likely to over collaborate than under collaborate. You don't want just one tool, which is to collaborate and get everyone on board. It's a great one, and you mentioned a CEO who really didn't have that, and you don't want to be like that. But you have to develop the other side of that, which is, okay, we've collaborated. I'm really good at taking feedback, and if I really hear it doesn't work, I'm definitely going to respond to that. But also, this time, it's going to go this way, you know?
Yeah. I mean, one of my co-founders I've known for a while, and they're great, and I've known them for years socially, and we've helped each other through situations, and I've mentored them. The other one, who I'd kind of started working with first, I really haven't known for very long, and I think something else there is just impressing that person, which is so silly. It's just
it's not silly.
That I should be doing right now, but it's also just because it's early in that relationship and it's such a
Sure.
meaningful, important relationship, it's like
these are
play
people
is
you're going to
on
be
their
working
mind.
super closely with, right, throughout this whole thing. So for you to care, yeah, exactly.
It's good.
Yeah, it's good. But I think just hold it a bit more lightly. You know that you might bend over backwards to preserve some kind of impression on this person. So you know that, so you can just hold it a little bit less seriously, right? Maybe you don't, or maybe going your own way isn't going to upset this person, or maybe they'll think, actually, it was a really good idea and I'm glad you said. We don't know any of those answers, right? But you just have to hold it a little bit less seriously, the job to make it okay in all those kinds of ways with that person.
Yeah.
And there's also something interesting here about, because I really have struggled with this for a long time. It's only in recent years that I'm getting anywhere near being all right with it. And I'm also a millennial, so you and I are very similar in age. And that's people liking me. I get really upset if I upset someone. It's almost the end of the world. It's awful, and things come crashing, and I will ruminate for days or even weeks. And we had something. Well, yeah, this comes up in my closest relationships, and it's really hard, and it gets in the way. And there's something around that's like the desire for connection, which is a very, very beautiful thing. But sometimes, some of my closest friends now are the folks who are able to say to me very clearly, I don't want to hang out tonight, I'm too tired, or these are my needs. And so there's a different way of building trust, which was so shocking to me the first few times I had these conversations with these friends. And then over time, I was like, oh, I know that this person is going to tell me how they feel. I don't have to do any legwork. I trust them much more easily. And I realized that also, in terms of discomfort, over time, the initial discomfort is like, woo, through the roof. And over time, the general discomfort fell way lower than I'd ever experienced in relationships before. And the reason I know I mentioned this now is because I wonder if with this person that you'd like, and it's not just about impressing, you want them to like you and to admire you and to want to work with you. And that's a beautiful desire. But there's something about you being able to make choices and to model how to deal with discomfort or how to deal with decision making, where they don't have to like everything that you do, but they have to be able to see you and understand that it's okay to make choices and to respect you, so that they know that they can trust you, because actually your commitment is to making this thing that you're creating together go as well as possible. And there's something about that. You're sharing a vision together. You're going to do your best for this vision. And maybe it's as simple, it's never this simple, but it's having a conversation about this and saying, I am really not comfortable with making decisions that I know you might disagree with, but because I love what we're doing here, as uncomfortable as it makes me, I'm going to take that discomfort for the team and make choices that are going to help us all move towards this common goal. Because it's not that binary thing. Sometimes the discomfort is necessary to be able to create this beautiful thing that you want to together. I feel like I've gone off on a speech here. Getting off the soapbox now.
I think, sorry, go on. Did you ever thought about that, John?
That's all true. You know, that I need to be comfortable with making bad decisions.
Not bad decisions.
Yes.
You've gone straight to bad decisions. Sometimes they're like messy decisions or good decisions that people don't like, but they work out. Like,
yeah,
there's a full palette of decisions.
Yes, and it's hard to always know whether they're good or bad decisions, especially in this
because
kind
you
of
can't always know that
stage.
Yeah,
because spending X amount of time doing this thing and Y amount of time doing that thing doesn't necessarily show up for months in terms of was that a good or bad decision.
Right. And most of those aren't going to be catastrophic, right? So if it shows up later that it's not working great, then you make a new decision, right? So there's a thing about, is it a bad decision? Does it mean failure? Am I going to offend this person? Or like all of those things, let's say 90% of them are, another decision can be made to fix it or make it better or to learn from, right?
Yeah. I think the thing, Natalie, that you said that is important for me to work on is to be okay disappointing people. I think
that's
that
a painful
is something I have to really work on. I've probably not worked on it enough personally as well as professionally, and that's something that is, is a constant theme.
Let me just reframe that a
Don't know how to
little bit,
fix
because
that
we're
though.
also coming to time, and
Yeah.
I want to make sure we're really clarified. So there's also a difference between disappointing and having a different point of view upon, right? So we don't want to overlap those things. We still want to make you more comfortable with possibly disappointing someone, right? But it's not always disappointing someone to have a different point of view, or even for there to be conflict, or even there to be strong conflict doesn't have to be disappointing. So we just want to watch over the clarification of, what do you want to be better at? Maybe just holding the discomfort of difference, conflict, a potential to disappoint someone, what happens when the disappointment happens, because that tends to be recoverable too, most of the time, right? But if you want to go by way of A and they want to go by way of B, and you fear that because they want to go by way of B, you're disappointing them, you might not be. You just want to go by way of A and they want to go by way of B. You see what I mean? So you can throw a value in there that makes it more difficult than maybe it needs to be, even though at the end of the day, it's still better, even if you're ready to tolerate possibly disappointing someone too, and knowing that when it's disappointed, you come together on that and you work it through, you know?
Yeah.
We also realize this is one conversation and there's
Yes,
a lot going on here. So also, if you're listening to this going, no, it's still just disappointment, you don't have to agree. Like, this is just to seed some ideas to maybe start opening some questions.
Yeah, and the two people I'm working, they're my two co-founders. They're very functional people. I wouldn't pick people who aren't fairly conscious of themselves.
Yes.
And
so there's probably a lot of room.
Yeah,
there's room to talk about this kind of thing, and we've already had discussions about having discussions and having discussions about feedback and making sure that we can give each other feedback, and that we're all safe to do that, and that's an important part of what we're doing. And it's just like day to day, there's higher stakes in terms of change than there's been in a very long time. So decisions day to day feel like they can have a big effect on the future, even near future. Do we go into this accelerator? What is that? If we do that, this means that all this travel is going to happen, or if we don't get into this thing, or if we all the decisions every day have huge consequences on planning, and it's just different. It should be. It's
scary. It's scary, and it's important, and there's a lot riding on it.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's all really important stuff, and that all informs the hesitation.
I also don't know how to. I don't know how to. Very separately from the discussion that we've been having, and kind of going back to something from before, I think one of the weights on all of this is, I really want to impress my co-founders. I want us to have a great relationship. I want us to go fast. I want us to be able to build something great. And then on top of all of that, I just don't know what happens when I become public about this, that I'm doing this thing. I've been telling people, a lot of people personally, and having a conversation with them. And I feel like at some point I have to become this new thing. And when I become that new thing and declare it, it changes how I interact with people. And it does worry me. It is something that I'm afraid of happening and is going to happen. And is just, I've not had to manage any of that for a long time. Early career I might have, but I've not had to I don't know. So I think one of the things is I need us to work really well as a team. I have some like preconceptions about what a startup should look like, and I've seen people succeed and people fail, and I've been judgmental about that in the past, and so now I'm feel that, that it's time to build the thing that also inspires people to come to me and say, yes, we want to be involved, as please hire me, or can we be on your beta, or what are you doing, that looks awesome. And I'm not sure of that yet. I don't know how to do that yet, to project that.
That's good, and that's fine, because I don't think you would know how to do it until you're doing it. Yeah. So I think
I wish that weren't the case.
I
As
know.
I said, I need to read more books.
Yeah, well, no, you've done your homework, right? So I think what we've kind of done is we kind of clarified the nature of the fear that's producing all sorts of stuff for you, which is actually, I think, quite a long way to come in a conversation this brief. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because because we haven't spoken before as well. So
no, I mean, this is, and you signed yourself up for this talk, and you've done all your homework, and you're doing more homework by doing here. There's a part of you that doesn't believe that, right? So maybe just in our kind of thinking about how we can help you before we finish the call is how to, in a sense, frame and hold this fear, because you don't get to not find out who you are without experiencing the fear, right?
It's your companion right now.
Yeah. You instinctually you want to avoid it, but you also don't get to find your way towards an end without making some mistakes you wish you hadn't made, or making some choices. So the only thing we can work with is expanding that tolerance for you around those issues. It's like, you think in the treatment of anxiety disorders, for example, the issue isn't, I need to clear away my anxiety before I can cross a bridge. They've got a bridge phobia. It's I've got to learn to tolerate the anxiety as I'm starting to walk over that bridge, so that I know the bridge isn't going to collapse and the anxiety isn't going to kill me either. So in your own pace and in your own way, we know that there's a certain kind of a fear. We don't know all about it yet. We know lots of elements of it. Might you be able to hold that fear in a different way after this conversation? Might you try something manageable that would scare you and see what happens and process that in a way at your pace? I'd throw it back at you. Is there like a risk? Is there something that you might choose differently, knowing that it's about how you engage with that fear?
I'm trying. I think I'm putting those kinds of things in front of me. I'm setting up at the moment a conversation with someone who I really respect, and I also really care about how she perceives me and what I'm doing. So, she's a CEO of a company, and she's someone who I've admired for a long time professionally. And I'm going to have a conversation with her. And so this is kind of me, taking little steps to be more public and explain who I am and what I'm doing. And so I'm trying to take little steps like that, I guess. I'm escalating.
I mean, you're definitely in it, right? You're scared every day. So you're not taking steps, that's for sure.
I think also there's a couple of things. There's an entrepreneur that I met years ago who actually was the reason that I ended up meeting the publisher where I got my first book. And I remember him saying something to me which really transformed my thinking at the time, because I'm quite a perfectionist, but also quite impulsive. So it's a bit of a funny dance to be in the middle of. And he said to me, entrepreneurs are people who build the plane while they're flying. Get used to it. I was like, what?
Oops.
Yeah. And he was like, we make this shit up as we go along. Once you've done it once or twice, you realize that that's kind of the thing. And the fear that accompanies, depending on how the fear is, that accompanies the risk is an indicator that you're doing something exciting and new. And it was just such a massive reframe. And this is someone who was 20 years older than me. I was in my or maybe 15 years older than me. And so I think there's something around that, like, you don't know what's going to happen. You have all of the tools under your belt, all of the experience. Maybe it might be useful to start writing down some of these questions around and ask some of your CEO friends, how do you deal with disappointment? What does fear look like to you? How do you hold difference? how do you decide what kind of CEO you're going to be? So some of the questions that you could maybe ask yourself also are, what are all of the negative things associated with this fear that you can write down and physically look at and bring in conversation to people that you trust, so you can start getting a bit more of a nuanced sense of how they make their decisions, what are some of the challenges that they've encountered and how they've grappled with them. Because I think you'll realize that you're in some really fine company.
And that there's room
Yeah.
to bungle around a little, and you need room to bungle around a little bit. And every bungle isn't the worst bungle. Most of those bungles you can bungle around, right, and fix it. And then the ones that aren't, the really big ones, if you can make that distinction, then those are the ones that you're extra careful about. But it's still a risk. You know, you can never just completely suck the risk out of it.
Yeah.
Mm.
What's something that you could commit to in terms of a step, something practical from the conversation that we've had today that could take you closer to the direction of where you want to be heading?
I don't know. I'm doing lots of little steps now, I think, in the right direction, but I don't know what is another. So, I mean, as I said, I'm kind of escalating the people that I'm talking to about this. And what I'm doing is wider and wider circles of people who I know less and less. And so I have to then take bigger leaps of discomfort telling them, and also risk that they'll miss the point because they don't know me well, or not have faith in the gaps of what I'm describing. So I think I'm doing that. I've got to keep having keep setting up difficult discussions or meetings with people. I think like one thing is transitioning into this role that's a lot about sales and marketing, whereas I've been in product roles where, yes, you have to do a lot of reach out, and some of that's cold reach out, but it's pretty safe. Like, people have always wanted to talk to me, and I'm not trying to take their money. I'm just trying to have discussions with them. Like, one thing I'm going to have to transition into doing is more sales. And that's very much putting yourself out there and saying, please have a discussion with me. And then, by the way, I might ask you for money for this thing that I'm doing. That's different. I've ended up doing sales in my product role because that's how it turns out. Have a discussion, someone gets interested, they're like, oh, that's really cool, I want to try it out. Okay, here you go. But I think more and more I've got to do more cold reach out and more discussions where I'm just putting myself out there, because it's me. At this stage there's three of us, but when I get on the phone, it's me. It's like, okay.
But I also just want to make sure you recover, right? Because you sound like someone who can push yourself quite hard, and like we have our inferior capacities.
What's
things
recovery?
That we're not. Well, like, how do you be gentle with yourself after subjecting yourself to something that's scary and tricky and risky, right?
I don't know.
To come back and be like, okay, that was hard. That was really hard. That freaked me out. Like, recover.
Probably.
Maybe go back. Sorry?
What were you going to say?
Go back into something that you feel really skilled and good at.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You're talking about how the stuff you're not so skilled up in, can be really hard and can drain your confidence. So it's like you step into that de-skilled area, you build your skills, but then you come back into your skilled area to rebuild your confidence and where you're comfortable. And it's this iterative process of like, okay, well, I'm not brilliant at the cold calling. I'm not brilliant about saying something that might produce conflict. But once I've subjected myself to that scary moment, what can I do to recover from it? Tell myself well done, or have someone else tell me well done, and sort of like, you need to come back and recover from. If every day you're jumping in the pool and feeling terrified, you got to get into the hot tub or the sauna or someplace where you feel warm and safe too,
Yeah. A lot of what I'm doing now is, I've done it a long time ago, but I haven't done it for a long time. And that is just has a lot of discomfort. And worry about doing the things that I'm good at, because a lot of those things are actually not appropriate for this stage. Like a lot of the things I've been doing recently will be awesome once we're past Series A, in like August 2025.
Yeah.
Then like I have a lot of confidence that the scaling mechanisms or operating at scale things that I have been doing for the past 10 years will make a lot of sense. Right now I'm doing things that I haven't done for a very long time, and there's most of the things that I'm kind of just trundling through, which is fine. But there's this kind of, I also have to really check myself to not go do things that I'm good at, because like a lot of those things aren't relevant.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like your kind of internal system of being able to recognize those things is good. And yeah, the issue is how you make those decisions, maybe when you know that you're throwing something in front of yourself that isn't where you need to be and what that log is.
I don't know how to recover.
Okay.
That's a real point.
That's
like,
useful.
I should be doing more exercise. I love going West Coast swing dancing. I should go do that.
Ooh, that sounds
we had children and there wasn't enough time, but now they're older and it's okay. But there are things I think I don't know how to recover. I think that's something that that's something
we can
me. Yeah.
Look into. Well, we're running towards the end now. We've got a few quick fire closures with you, and then we're gonna hopefully we can meet with you again maybe in a month or 6 weeks or something and kind of see if anything shifted around this stuff. So Natalie, do you want to take the first quick fire close?
Yeah, so as we keep layering back the onions, or peeling back the layers of the onion, how are you feeling right now in this moment? And kind of like, can be even a few scattered words, but because you've gone very deeply in quite a short amount of time, you've been extraordinarily courageous and candid.
Yeah, we've held your feet to the fire.
Yeah.
Not better, but interested in these things, like that. Thinking about relationships that I need to work on the difference between disappointment and disagreement, and thinking about how having kind of early discomfort in a relationship can make you more comfortable later on. So that's for my team. And then thinking about recovery, what does that mean? How do I structure my work day to include that concept if that's what I need? All of these things, like I'm not comfortable with it yet. I think there's lots to do and I need to get it done.
Yeah, there's a lot of discomfort here.
I don't like having to do things that are things that I have to do because I'm not good at doing the things yet. I don't like having to spend time on recovery because that's not getting the things done. So I think I probably just end up doing recovery things rather than planning that. So that's uncomfortable to think about structuring that in. So uncomfortable, one way that I'm feeling. But I appreciate this is not a rapid fire answer. Sorry. I appreciate the support. Like, I agree that I need to keep saying to myself, I've done the homework. That's true. And I think that's something that I need. I need a few different mantras that I'm to kind of like get me through this stage. And so that's a good one.
Yeah.
So that's helpful.
I think that's a good one. I think that's a good one for you too. And I'm going to change the question I have written down here for you. And I'm going to say, what recovery thing might you be able to choose to do for yourself, say within the next 2 to 3 weeks? Because I think in order for you to get the job done that you really want to get done, you can't do it if you don't give yourself recovery. So while it might feel like a waste of time to you, or like you should be doing the uncomfortable stuff, you need to get your petrol back in the tank. Yeah. So would it be dancing? Is there something that doesn't have to be a major commitment?
Exercise bike at home. I should just get on that and I haven't been doing that for a while. That's probably the most kind of, I can go do that for an hour, or I can do that for half an hour, and it's encapsulated. That's probably the thing that I need to do. I've not been building that in, and I can probably justify that to
I still
my
wish for you it would be
co-founders and my
something a little bit
wife.
more
And
fun than a stationary
more
bike.
pleasurable.
Like
a
something
massage.
Yeah,
or,
like something that nourishes you.
or a hike, or
Yeah.
or getting a babysitter to. Well, you don't need to because they're older, but like
no,
going
we
out on
still
a
do.
date.
They're 6 and 8. When I say older, they're not like in,
so they're
you know,
still
Okay.
young.
yeah, they're not like, it's very
I
different
think
up
Natalie
until
and
they're
I
3.
would
you know?
really have a hope for you, John, to enable yourself to, because you have no choice but to be uncomfortable so much of the time.
Yeah.
And so much of this is forcing you to lean into your growing edge, that to allow yourself space from that discomfort is really important. It's not just like, ooh, self-care. It's like, I need, it's like you can't run a marathon and then run a marathon the next day, right? You need to rest. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I would be really gratified to know that maybe you could think about what you might be able to do for yourself that isn't a should or a must, or
It's like I've longed to do this thing. If I had time when I retire, this is what I would long to do. or the John of, 30 years ago, what did he most enjoy doing that was just pure play and pleasure? And maybe that could be a task that you can joyfully give to yourself, like over a coffee or whatever, is write a list. What are the things that I miss most, that I loved, that are playful, and just no strings attached, and just write that list. And then maybe build in the simplest of those, and get people to get into it with you, like your wife. Tell her about your list and be like, right, I want to pick something on here. Can you help me do it? Because sometimes it's easier to get permission to do the
treat
things
yourself.
that we love. Treat yourself.
It's one thing.
Yeah. Could you commit to that?
Oh yeah, I can write a list.
Okay.
So you're going to write a list after this call. You're going to try and do something nice. Is there anything that you want to check out with us? Say, get off your chest, clarify before we finish the call? And would you be happy to speak to us in a few weeks' time to kind of see what may or may not have happened in the interim?
Yeah, if we could make it 6 weeks, that'd be good. I want to get through this like transition and then be on the other side of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. But I can commit to that. I can write the list. I can try and structure recovery into my day. I think I don't like the idea that I want to incorporate this idea that to do uncomfortable things that are different and hard should mean that I should incorporate recovery time. I don't know that I'm quite incorporating that yet, but I think that I would like to incorporate that. So
yeah,
let's see if that works. Yeah, I think if I don't structure it in, it just happens anyway, because I just get off track and less creative and less decisive and less productive. So may as well be deliberate about it.
Yeah, I mean, think just good old-fashioned positive reinforcement. You have to do something really uncomfortable in a day. You know you're going to have to show up for that in a way that's really uncomfortable. Have you got something in your cup? Eat, if it's a nice meal, if it's
chocolate
going up
cake.
anything that's just like, okay, well, I'm gonna give myself something nice because I made myself do something really hard.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like, because I know it can feel like you're kind of taking a detour away from where you want to be going. I'm quite doggedly determined in that way, like you are. But I've realized that it's like when you're trying to get shit done in a day and it's getting later and later and you're knackered because you've done too much, and you have to make simple decisions like I need to book a flight, or I need to get to like a Google Map address, whatever. And you're sitting looking, usually for me it shows up, looking at your phone, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. All my tabs are open, everything's frozen, and I'm trying to execute on a very simple task. And actually that's the point at which it's just like, put it down, go to sleep after a nice dinner, wake up, and then I can do that task within a minute the next day. It's that kind of the building the recovery time in gets you from A to B with greater ease and with less pain and less time usually. So like the recovery time often is an enabler of more fluent ease of travel in the direction that you want to be going.
And you deserve it.
Yeah.
You've been developing this in some way for at least 12 years. There's a part of you that is ready to subject yourself to this kind of challenge and this kind of fear. There's a lot of resistance to it, but you've done it. You've made this choice. You're there, right? You're doing it. So do it. Be gentle with yourself in that too, because you're taking a risk, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's really great. You know, you have done your homework. You should feel really pleased.
And it's exciting for us to see what happens. It's
yeah,
very exciting time.
Exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for showing up for this interview and being so honest with us about it.
Yeah.
And really going for
it's
it.
not
We
easy.
appreciate
So we really appreciate it.
that. Yeah.
Thanks for holding
And
it.
yeah, so
It's good to be able to talk.